Welcome back to Melvin's Tales from Venice Barbershop. I'm John. If you've been listening, you know that things have gotten complicated around here. First, it was the mutant crows. Then, it was the locked bathroom. And now, it's something that makes both of those things seem almost normal. It's about one of our regular customers. A guy named Richard. Melvin came to me with something that made my skin crawl. He said, "There's a customer who comes in every Friday at 2 p.m. His name is Richard. He's been coming here for years. And I just realized he's never actually gotten a haircut." I told him that was impossible. I know Richard. He's one of our regulars. Nice guy. Always polite. Always tips well. Of course he gets haircuts. Melvin said, "Show me his records." So I pulled up our records. I searched for Richard. And there was nothing. No transaction history. No service records. No payment logs. Nothing. I told Melvin there must be a mistake. Maybe we spelled his name wrong. Maybe we logged him under a different name. But Melvin said, "I've been tracking him for 6 months. Every Friday at 2 p.m. he walks in. He sits in the waiting area. He waits for about 20 minutes. Then he stands up, waves at us, and leaves. He never sits in a barber chair. He never asks for a haircut. He just visits." And that's when it hit me. I thought about it. Really thought about it. And I realized Melvin was right. I can picture Richard sitting in the waiting area. I can picture him waving goodbye. But I can't picture him in a barber chair. I can't picture cutting his hair. I can't picture taking his payment. It's like those memories don't exist. Like I've been filling in blanks that were never there. Melvin said, "I asked Sam and Jim about him. They both said the same thing. Oh yeah, Richard. Nice guy. Regular customer. But when I asked them when they last cut his hair, they couldn't remember. Neither of them could remember a BA. Single haircut. Now I'm freaking out because I have vivid memories of Richard being a regular customer. I remember conversations with him. I remember him talking about his job, his family, his weekend plans. But I don't remember ever cutting his hair. It's like the memories are real, but the actual service never happened. Like we've all been remembering a version of Richard that doesn't actually exist." Melvin said, "I think he's been coming here for years, and none of us have noticed that he's never actually gotten a service. We just accepted that he's a regular. We assumed he was getting haircuts, but he wasn't." I asked Melvin what he thought was going on, and he said, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." So this past Friday at 2 p.m., Melvin waited. And sure enough, Richard walked in. He smiled, waved at us, sat down in the waiting area, and pulled out his phone. Melvin walked over and said, "Richard, can I ask you something? When was the last time you got a haircut here?" Richard looked confused. He said, "What do you mean? I get my hair cut here all the time." Melvin said, "When was the last time? Do you remember the date?" Richard thought about it. And he couldn't answer. He said, "I don't know. A few weeks ago, maybe last month. I come here regularly, so I don't really keep track." Melvin said, "Our records show you've never gotten a haircut here. We have no transaction history for you, no service logs, nothing." Richard looked genuinely shocked. He said, "That's impossible. I've been coming here for years. I know you guys. You know me. I'm a regular." Melvin said, "You are a regular. You come here every Friday at 2 p.m., but you don't get haircuts. You just sit in the waiting area for 20 minutes and then leave. Richard looked at Melvin like he'd just been told he didn't exist. He said, "No, that's not right. I get haircuts here. I know I do." But then he looked down at his hands, and he couldn't say anything else. He just sat there, staring at his hands, trying to remember a haircut that never happened. I watched this happen. I watched Melvin confront Richard with the truth. And I watched Richard realize that something was fundamentally wrong with his reality. After a long silence, and I mean a long silence, like 5 minutes of just Richard staring at his hands, he stood up, waved at us like he always does, and left. Melvin turned to me and said, "He doesn't know. He genuinely believes he's been getting haircuts here. But he hasn't, and we've all been pretending he has. Now I'm terrified because I don't know what Richard is. I don't know why he comes here every Friday. I don't know why we all remember him as a regular customer when he's never actually been serviced. And I don't know what happens if we stop pretending. Because here's the thing, Richard believes he's a regular. He believes he gets haircuts here. He believes he belongs here. And maybe that belief is the only thing keeping him real." Melvin's been tracking Richard's visits even more closely now. He's documenting exact arrival times, how long he stays, what he does while he's here, and whether his appearance ever changes. He's also started tracking whether other customers notice Richard or if he's invisible to them. And here's what he found. Most customers don't seem to notice Richard at all. They come in, get their haircut, leave. Richard sits in the waiting area the whole time, and nobody acknowledges him. It's like he's there and not there at the same time. Last Friday, Richard came in at 2 p.m. like always. He sat down. He waited, and then he looked directly at Melvin and said, "I'm sorry." Melvin asked, "Sorry for what?" Richard said, "I don't know, but I feel like I should apologize." Then he stood up, waved, and left. Melvin said, "I think Richard knows something's wrong. I think he's starting to realize he doesn't belong here. But he keeps coming back anyway because he doesn't know where else to go." I asked Melvin what we should do, and he said, "Nothing. We keep letting him come. We keep pretending everything's normal, because if we don't, I'm afraid he'll disappear. And I don't think that's what he wants. And you know what? I think Melvin's right. Because Richard doesn't need a haircut. He needs a place to be. He needs to know that somewhere, someone is expecting him. That somewhere he belongs. So now every Friday at 2 p.m., Richard comes in. He sits in the waiting area. He waits for 20 minutes. And then he waves and leaves. And we all pretend he's a regular customer. We all pretend everything's normal. We all pretend that Richard is exactly what he says he is, a guy who gets his hair cut here regularly. Because maybe that's all he needs to be. I've been running this barbershop for 15 years. I've cut thousands of haircuts. I've had conversations with hundreds of customers. I've built a business on tradition and consistency and the idea that everyone who walks through that door deserves to be treated with respect. But Richard taught me something different. He taught me that sometimes belonging is more important than the details. Sometimes a place to be is more valuable than a service rendered. Melvin asked me once, "Do you think Richard is real?" And I said, "I don't know, but I know he's here. Every Friday at 2 p.m. he's here, and that's real enough for me." So here's what I've learned from all of this. The crows, the locked bathroom, Richard. I've learned that reality is a lot more flexible than I thought. I've learned that sometimes the most important things aren't the things you can measure or track or put in a database. Sometimes the most important thing is just showing up, being there. letting someone know they belong. If you're in Venice, Florida, stop by the shop. We're right off US 41, next to the courthouse. We're open Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 6, and Saturdays 10 to 2. Walk-ins only. We'll give you a great haircut, a hot lather shave, maybe a beard trim. And if you're here on a Friday at 2 p.m., you might see Richard. He'll be sitting in the waiting area. He'll be quiet. He'll probably wave at you when you leave. Just wave back. That's all he needs. This has been Melvin's Tales from Venice Barbershop. I'm John, and Melvin says to remind you, stay dapper, stay sharp, and remember that everyone deserves a place to belong, even if they're not quite sure why they're here.